let's say that you normally go to bed at 10 p.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m., but tomorrow morning you've got an early morning flight, so you have to wake up at 4 a.m. rather than 6 a.m. How much sleep have you lost? Well, you've lost 2 hours of your 8-hour night of sleep, so you've lost 25%. Yes and no. You've lost 25% of your total sleep, but based on the structure of sleep that we just described, you may have lost 50, 60, 70% of all of your REM sleep, all of your dream sleep. So there are real implications to understanding that.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, director of the Center for Human Sleep Science, and host of the Matt Walker podcast. Dr. Matthew Walker, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Pleasure to be with you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled that we're doing this because, as you know, we're airing this in August, but right now it's the last couple of days of July. I am on my 30-day digital and really societal sabbatical, and I'm going to work on a lot of things: diet, exercise, digital detox, but also work on some sleep stuff, and that is your area of expertise. So I guess before I ask you anything else, how does one become curious and enamored and eventually live their life to tell people about sleep, of all things?
Yeah, I think myself, like many of my colleagues, we are all accidental sleep researchers. You know, I don't think when we were kids and you were going around the classroom and the teacher was saying, what would you like to be when you grow up? No one was shooting up their hand and saying, I'd really love to be a sleep researcher. So I fell into it by accident when I was doing my PhD. I was studying different types of dementia and trying to diagnose them very early on, failing miserably. And I realized I should be measuring my patients when they were asleep rather than when they were awake to measure their brainwave activity. Started doing that, got some great results, and realized, that was 20 years ago, realized that at the time, no one could answer a very simple question: why do we sleep? And the best answer we had back then was that we sleep to cure sleepiness, which is the fatuous equivalent. You know, that's like saying, well, you eat to cure hunger. No, you eat for a whole plethora of different reasons. Now, 20 years later, due to the work of all of my colleagues, and we've done a little bit too, I hope, we've had to upend the question. We've had to ask, is there any operation of your brain and is there any physiological system in your body that isn't wonderfully enhanced when you get sleep or demonstrably impaired when you don't get enough? And so far, the answer seems to be no.
Yeah, all right. Well, there's a whole bunch of questions that I want to ask you that are going to revolve sort of around my sleep habits and my nap habits and this thing, what's in this coffee cup right now, which you probably can guess.
I'm so glad that you're drinking decaffeinated.
I honestly don't think I've ever had decaf. But before we get into any of those specifics, can you just talk to me sort of broadly about sleep? You know, we hear about sort of like, you know, the type of sleep that you're having throughout the night. What's the most important? When are you getting the most restorative stuff? All that.
Yeah, so sleep, at least in human beings, and in fact in all mammalian species, is broadly separated into two types. We have non-rapid eye movement sleep, and then we have rapid eye movement sleep. And those two types of sleep will play out in this beautiful sort of battle for brain domination throughout the night. And then the cerebral war is going to be won and lost between non-REM and REM every 90 minutes. And then it's just going to be replayed every 90 minutes to create your standard sort of Dave Rubin sleep cycle. What's different, however, is the ratio of non-REM to REM within those 90-minute cycles as you move across the night. So what I mean by that is, in the first half of last night, the majority of your 90-minute cycles were comprised of lots of deep non-REM sleep and very little REM sleep. But as you push through to the second half of the night, that seesaw balance actually shifts. And now the majority of those 90-minute cycles is comprised much more of REM sleep. And REM sleep is the stage that we typically associate with dreaming. And I mention this sort of architecture, not just because it's hopefully intellectually interesting, but it has implications. So let's say that you normally, I'm just going to make this up and we'll hopefully hear what your actual sleep schedule is, but let's say that you normally go to bed at 10 p.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m., But tomorrow morning, you've got an early morning flight. So you have to wake up at 4 a.m. rather than 6 a.m. How much sleep have you lost? Well, you've lost 2 hours of your 8-hour night of sleep. So you've lost 25%. Yes and no. You've lost 25% of your total sleep. But based on the structure of sleep that we just described, you may have lost 50, 60, 70% of all of your REM sleep, all of your dream sleep. So there are real implications to understanding that. To your point, though, which one is more important? All stages of sleep are actually important. Different stages of sleep do different things for your brain and your body at different times of night, but we need all of them. When you think about sleep as being such an idiotic thing to do from an evolutionary perspective, if Mother Nature could have said, well, I'm going to take these 3 stages of sleep and I'm just going to remove them so we save some time and there's no harm to the organism, then she would have done it hundreds, millions of years ago. But all stages of sleep have been preserved throughout the evolutionary path. That means all of them are important, and that's exactly what we're finding.
So is 8 hours, is that the magic number that everybody sort of still seems to think is like, for the average person, 8 hours is the number that you want to get?
There is a range. So what we recommend right now is somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep is what the average adult seems to require. Once you get below 7, we can typically start to measure impairments in your brain and your body. And, so much so based on the evidence that the number of people who seem to be able to survive on less than 6 hours of sleep without showing any impairment, rounded to a whole number and expressed as a percent of the population, is actually 0.
Interesting. So I'll give you a little bit of my personal part of this on the 8 hours. When I started writing my first book last year, or really over 2 years ago at this point, when I first started writing it, I would find that I was thinking about it so much that I would go to sleep, let's say somewhere between like 11 and 12 p.m., or midnight basically. I'd be thinking, and then I'd wake up early with the same thoughts on my mind. So I'd wake up at like 6 a.m. and then from 6 a.m. till literally like 3 p.m. I could just write. And then it'd be like, man, I need a break right now. And I started taking sort of 20-minute or half-hour naps around 3 p.m. And I still try to do that. I can't always do it, obviously, but I try to do that. And I'm curious, if you can move some of it into a nap later in the day, do you need it continuously?
That's a beautiful question. So firstly, there is some importance about the continuity of sleep. And what I mean by that is at night, for that 6 hours that you were getting, if it's very choppy sleep, it's very sort of staccato and it's broken up and it's peppered with lots of awakenings, that's not good quality sleep. But let's go back to your example or your lived life, which is, 6 hours of sleep and then a nap during the day. Is that okay? I think the first thing to note is that we human beings may not have been designed in the way that most of us sleep right now, which is what we call monophasic sleep. In other words, one long single bout of sleep at night. Because if I place electrodes on your head, sometime between the sort of 1 to 4 p.m. mark for most people, there is a drop in your brain's level of alertness, and it's pre-programmed. It has nothing to do with a big lunch, by the way. Some people think that. But, in the afternoon in meetings, you can start to see those ugly head bobs that sort of, it's a dead giveaway. People are falling.
That's the 3 o'clock feeling, right? Didn't those 5-hour energy people made an awful lot of money on this feeling?
They certainly did indeed, but it's genetically hardwired. As I said, it's pre-programmed. It happens to all of us. What that means is that we may not have been designed as a species to sleep in a monophasic pattern. We may have been designed to sleep in what we call a biphasic pattern, which is a long bout of sleep at night, just as you're getting, and then a short sort of siesta-like nap in the afternoon. So I think that that's perfectly fine. In fact, we may be designed to do that. But naps are a double-edged sword. There is a dark side to naps, and it's the following. When you're awake during the day, you build up all of this healthy sleepiness, and it's a chemical that builds up. And it's been building up in my brain and your brain since the moment we woke up this morning, and it's called adenosine. The more of it that builds up, the sleepier you feel. And then when you go to sleep at night, the brain gets the chance to evacuate all of that sleep pressure, all of that adenosine, so that after about 8 hours, you wake up feeling refreshed and restored. The problem with naps then is that if you take a nap that's too long or too late in the afternoon or in the evening, it just takes the edge off that sleepiness. It's a little bit like a valve on a steam cooker. It just releases some of that steam. And so now it's harder for you to fall asleep and then stay asleep at night. So it's a little bit like snacking before your main meal. So I think for you, I would say if you are not struggling with sleep at night and you can nap regularly during the day, then naps of about 20 minutes, sort of sometime around, sort of stop before about 4 p.m., that's great. But if you are struggling with sleep at night, then avoid naps during the day. Build up all of that healthy sleepiness.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about lifestyles instead of nonstop yelling, check out our lifestyle playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out our full episode playlist. They're both right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.